What's going on, team? In this video, I'm going to answer the question which has been on your mind ever since you stepped foot in the gym. Is it better to use light weights or heavy weights? So this is an incredibly complex and even contradicting topic. So what we're going to do to try to simplify this, we're going to go in the office, we're going to put this on the whiteboard, and we're going to get down to business. At the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to design your training programs to milk the most gains out of them possible. Let's go inside. YouTube, what is going on? Okay, so I've laid out all of the goods, and what we're going to dive into first is heavy training, utilizing mechanical tension, right? The goal with building muscle is always to figure out, one, how to offset the protein balance, right? We want to synthesize more protein, being in an anabolic state versus a catabolic state where we're breaking down protein. And so we need to figure out a training style that's gonna allow us to achieve that while also opening up anabolic signaling pathways that are gonna allow us to have a hypertrophic response and make some gains. So the very first place we're gonna start on this debate is heavy weight training. This is essentially just utilizing or manipulating mechanical tension. This is the goal of just getting stronger, putting more load upon our muscles. And this is the most proven way to have a hypertrophic effect on our muscles, to make gains. This is the most tested and proven strategy. Essentially, what happens when we have mechanical tension, there's things called mechanosensors within our muscles, and they're able to actually sense the load and the duration of the weight that we put on them. They're also able to differentiate between a concentric, an eccentric, and isometric, and each of those are going to have a different response. We're going to open up different signaling pathways, and we're going to have a different anabolic effect within our muscles. The main one being an eccentric movement is pretty much going to produce more of a hypertrophic effect than a concentric or an isometric movement when it comes to mechanical tension. So what happens is when we lift a heavy weight, we're stimulating mTOR, we're stimulating protein synthesis. We're going to be in a more of an anabolic state than a catabolic state, right? We're going to be synthesizing more protein opposed to breaking down protein, and that's always the goal, right? We want to break down less protein and synthesize more protein. No matter what your training approach is, that's always the main goal. And so what happens is there's this process called mechanotransduction, and essentially mechanical forces that are placed upon muscles are converted into these signaling events, which start opening up these cellular signaling pathways, which lead to gains. There's so many different pathways, and each one has multiple studies upon it, and this video would be way too long to touch on every single one of them. But just know this process of mechanotransduction essentially is going to open up intracellular, anabolic, and catabolic pathways. Essentially, when load is placed on the muscles through mechanical tension, it's going to send these chemical signals throughout the body, which are going to open up signaling pathways, and that's really what's going to be driving a hypertrophic response. So, on the flip side, we have the lightweight argument. This would be the bodybuilding approach. This is the idea of going into the gym, having a very high volume, I just dropped my marker, short rest time, chasing the pump, if you will. And this area is a little more fringe sciencey. It's a little more difficult to differentiate really what the net effect is. But what we do know is placing metabolic stress upon our muscles has an anabolic effect. It's just very difficult within a study to differentiate the two because they are interrelated to some degree. But essentially what happens when we go into the gym and we're having sets where we're going from 12 to 15 reps, we're getting that nasty pump, and we're really focusing on these short rest times, and it's just go the whole entire time. We have a metabolite accumulation within our muscles, which is like lactate and inorganic phosphate and a whole slew of other things building up in our muscles. And these are typically going to be sets that last for 15 to 120 seconds. So these sets are going to be a little bit longer duration in nature, opposed to a more heavyweight kind of training approach where you might do 2-3 reps of bench press and it lasts 6 to 10 seconds, right? So this is going to be focusing on that mind-muscle connection, really manipulating the eccentric part of the movement, and being a little slower, a little more methodical through the lifting process. And so what happens is there's different thresholds of motor units. And as we get deeper into this metabolic stress area, as we get deeper into these sets and we're really pushing and getting that pump, we're gonna actually engage more type 2 muscle fibers, right? There's a threshold, there's like the low hanging fruit, and then there's the type 2 muscle fibers, which are a little harder to engage. And so we're gonna engage those motor units and recruit more muscle fibers by taking these sets closer to failure and having these higher intensity workouts. And so that is one of the benefits of this lighter weight training, or this more metabolically stressful training, is that we're able to engage more muscle fibers. And type 2 muscle fibers are typically going to be the muscle fibers that we want to engage. When it comes to hypertrophy and it comes to building muscle, these muscle fibers right here have the highest potential for growth, so it's what we're going to want to focus on. Now, as an added benefit to this whole entire training approach, what happens is when we're chasing that pump and we're having these lighter weight workouts and we're really focusing on just driving as much blood into the muscles and we're having these intense lifts, we're gonna get what's called cell swelling. Essentially, our cells are gonna become more hydrated, and we don't fully understand why the net result of this is gonna be more protein synthesis and decreased protein breakdown. And if you guys remember from the very beginning of this video, that is always the goal, right? How can we offset this so we have more of this and less of this? That's always going to be the goal. And as an effect of this metabolically stressful training, we're going to have the cell swelling, which in itself has benefits. Now, on top of this, both these training strategies are going to have an acute spike in hormones. Now, we don't know how beneficial these acute spikes are. It's hard to really figure out if these acute spikes are going to be a game changer, but what we know is they don't necessarily hurt. And both of these are going to cause an acute spike in hormones. You know, for example, like this lighter weight training is going to increase up to 10 to 290 times more growth hormone post-workout. Again, this is acute, so it's not going to be like that forever, but this is going to be spiked for anywhere from 24 to 48 hours after training. So what you're probably gathering from this is that both of these seem to work, right? They both have merit. They both have hypertrophic qualities to them. They both can produce gains. And anecdotally, what we see is that this lighter weight training typically builds more muscle. And this is anecdotally. I mean, you go into any gym, you look at a power lifter, you look at a bodybuilder, typically the bodybuilder is going to have more muscle. The problem is it's really, really, really hard to isolate lightweight training within a study, right? Because where there's lightweight training, there's also mechanical tension to some degree. What we do know, though, is that from the research, this is the main driver of hypertrophy. Think of progressive overload. Think about just consistently upping the weight on your lifts. We know this to work. And so really the ideal system is to marry these two pieces together. The best training approach is a training approach that's going to take advantage of both lighter weight, more metabolically stressful training, and more progressive mechanical tension focused training, where we're actually upping the weight on our compound lifts and getting stronger over time. So typically how I design my programs for myself and for my clients is by doing one of two things. Either we'll have a training day where we go heavy first, and so we're focusing on progressing on our compounds, and then towards the end of the workout, we'll have some little more metabolically stressful sets. We're really going to be focused on that cellular swelling and getting a pump. Or on the flip side, what we'll do is an undulation within our program, right? So we might have a week where we focus purely on heavyweight training, and then a week where we're chasing the pump and focusing on this lighter weight training. And so unfortunately, it's hard to give a clear-cut answer to this problem. There's obviously benefit to both of these styles of training. The issue is that this is not scalable. Where mechanical tension is scalable, we can continue to increase the load. At a certain point, it becomes tricky to continually increase intensity through these metabolically stressful workouts. How hard can you really work? How short of a rest time can you really take? And so you have to be implementing the idea of progressively getting stronger on your lifts to continuously make gains. So if you guys liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below. I'll have plenty more whiteboards coming your way, and I'll see you guys in the next video.